The Apex Delusion War Admiral Kyphex of the Xyrithi Dominion stood before the holographic display, his four massive arms crossed behind his chitinous back. The blue marble of Earth rotated slowly, its surface patterns analyzed by the Dominions. Finest xenobiologists. His crimson eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction, soft tissue composition, weak bone density. No natural armor plating, reported Chief Biologist Vorthik, his mandibles clicking with disdain. The dominant species, these humans evolved on a garden world. Low gravity, temperate climate, abundant resources. They are prey animals, War Admiral. Kyphex's throat rumbled with approval. For 8 centuries, the Xyrithi had carved their empire through the galaxy's most hostile sectors. Born on Xyrthik, a world of perpetual storms and crushing gravity, they had evolved into the perfect killing machines. Their homeworld's toxic atmosphere had forged lungs that could process any chemical compound. Their dense musculature could crush steel. Their neural implants linked them to a collective battle consciousness that made them unbeatable in combat. Deployment orders, War Admiral? Asked Strike Captain Nexus, his biomechanical enhancements gleaming under the command center's harsh lights. Send the Stalker Pack, 12 of our finest. Let them test these humans and report back. If they prove as pathetic as our analysis, suggests we'll begin full-scale harvesting operations within a lunar cycle. The Stalker Pack was the Dominion's elite reconnaissance force warriors who had survived the flesh pits of Xyrthak and emerged as living weapons. Each stood 9 feet tall, with reflexes that could track a plasma bolt in flight. Their exoskeletons were grafted with quantum processors that calculated trajectory and weak points in nanoseconds dot as the stealth ship departed for Earth. Kyphex allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Dominion's expansion had slowed in recent decades. Most species either submitted immediately or proved too technologically advanced to conquer efficiently. These humans seemed different numerous enough to provide substantial labor, primitive enough to offer no real resistance. The holographic Earth continued its rotation, showing vast cities, scattered settlements, and seemingly endless wilderness. Intelligence reports indicated the humans had achieved basic space travel and nuclear technology, but their weapons were crude kinetic devices. No plasma shields, no matter displacement fields, no neural combat networks. War Admiral, Vorthik continued, preliminary scans indicate several billion humans across the planet. If even 10% survive the harvesting, we'll have enough slaves to fuel expansion for the next century. Kyphex's laugh was a sound like grinding metal. Send word to the fleet. Prepare for a new world to join our empire. These humans will learn what it means to face the apex species of the galaxy. None of them noticed the subtle electromagnetic anomalies surrounding Earth signals that didn't match any known technology in their databases. None of them questioned why a species with such primitive technology had managed to survive and thrive on a world that should have been picked clean by more advanced predators. The Stalker Pack descended toward Earth, confident in their superiority. They had no idea they were about to become the hunted. The vanishing Morgan Vex pressed himself against the moss-covered bark of an ancient Sitka spruce, his weathered hand steady on the modified Barrett rifle. Through the scope's thermal imaging, he watched the 12 figures moving through the Alaskan wilderness with inhuman precision. Their heat signatures were wrong, too hot, too structured, like walking furnaces wrapped in metal. 3 days ago, the atmospheric disturbance had lit up every underground monitoring station from NORAD to the Pentagon. The official story was a meteor shower. The truth was 12 alien dropships had landed in his backyard, and Morgan had been tracking them ever since .40-3 years old. Former Delta Force, former CIA, Black Ops, former everything the government wanted erased. Now he was just a ghost in the wilderness, living off-grid in a cabin his grandfather had built. But old habits died hard, and when hostile forces invaded his territory, Morgan did what he'd always done. He hunted. The Xarthi stalker pack moved through the forest like living nightmares. Each warrior stood nearly 9 feet tall, their bodies a fusion of organic muscle and mechanical enhancement. Retractable claws extended from their fingers. Sensors swept the environment for threats, and their alien language clicked and hissed through the crisp mountain air. Strike, Captain Nexus raised, his primary arm signaling the pack to halt. His enhanced senses had detected something, a scent that didn't belong to the local ecosystem. Human sweat, weapon oil, and something else. Something that made his combat instincts twitch. Stalker Prime, he transmitted to the pack's neural network. We have potential contact. Defensive formation. The pack dispersed instantly, becoming shadows among the trees. Their training had prepared them for everything: armed resistance, primitive traps, even coordinated military response. What they hadn't prepared for was a single human who had spent 20 years learning to become invisible. Morgan's finger found the trigger as he tracked the alien leader. The rifle's chamber held a round he'd been saving for a special occasion: depleted uranium core, plasma-tipped, designed to penetrate advanced armor. He'd acquired it from a contact who claimed it could punch through a tank. Time to find out. Shot echoed through the forest like thunder. Strike, Captain Nexus's head snapped back, his neural implants sparking as the round tore through his skull. He dropped without a sound, his body systems failing in cascade. The pack's neural network erupted in confusion. Their leader was dead, their quantum processors struggling to recalibrate. In their moment of disorientation, Morgan moved. He'd prepared for this moment for years, ever since a classified briefing had mentioned the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. The forest around his cabin was a maze of concealed weapons caches, improvised explosives, and killing zones mapped with surveyor's precision. The Xarthi found themselves in a nightmare of asymmetric warfare. Claymore mines detonated from hidden positions. Sniper fire came from impossible angles. Their thermal vision was useless against an enemy who knew how to mask his heat signature with mud and vegetation. One by one, the pack members fell, not to overwhelming force, but to patience, preparation, and the kind of lethality that came from a lifetime of making impossible kills. By dawn, 11 Xarthi warriors lay dead in the Alaskan wilderness. The 12th, wounded and systems failing, managed to activate his emergency beacon before Morgan's knife found his throat. The transmission lasted less than 3 seconds, but it was enough to alert the Dominion that their stalker pack was gone. Morgan stood among the alien corpses, already planning his next move. This was just the beginning. The Response General Marcus Kane studied the satellite imagery on the Situation Room's main display, his weathered face grim. The 12 heat signatures that had appeared over Alaska 3 days ago were now cold spots scattered across 50 square miles of wilderness. Whatever had happened to the uninvited guests, it hadn't been an accident. "Sir," reported Colonel Diana Thorne, the Pentagon's liaison to Project Nightfall, "we've confirmed ground contact. One of our assets in the region has eliminated the initial incursion force." Kane nodded. Morgan Vex wasn't officially on any government payroll, but his cabin sat at the center of a carefully constructed monitoring network, sometimes the best. Way to keep dangerous men loyal was to let them think they were free. "Orbital surveillance shows 2 more vessels approaching Earth," Thorne continued. "Larger than the first wave. We're looking at perhaps 100 hostiles." The president's voice crackled through the secure comm system. "General, I need to know what we're dealing with." "Are we at war?" Kane's smile was sharp as a blade. "Mr. President, we've been at war for 70 years. We just never told anyone." The briefing that followed would have shattered most civilians' understanding of reality. Project Nightfall had been monitoring extraterrestrial activity since 1954. The supposed UFO sightings were real advanced reconnaissance probes testing Earth's defenses. The government's response hadn't been denial. It had been preparation. Deep beneath the Colorado Rockies, the Blackwood facility hummed with activity. Dr. James Blackwood, the project's chief scientist, watched as technicians activated systems that had been dormant for decades. The facility's neural network was based on technology reverse-engineered from crashed alien vessels, but enhanced with something the visitors never expected: human creativity. "Bring the Prometheus grid online," Blackwood ordered. Full spectrum deployment. Around the globe, hidden installations began emerging from beneath forests, deserts, and ocean floors. The Prometheus grid wasn't just a defense system, it was a trap. For 7 decades, humanity had been studying every alien probe, every scout ship, every fragment of technology that had fallen into their hands. They'd learned to mimic the visitors' signals, to understand their technology, to prepare for this moment. The approaching Xarnak vessels detected what appeared to be a primitive planet with basic electromagnetic defenses. They didn't recognize the energy signatures as deliberately disguised bait. In the Nevada desert, Captain Lisa Rodriguez activated the Hadron Cannon, its particle beam capable of cutting through any known material. In the Atlantic, the USS Leviathan surfaced, its hull bristling with weapons that officially didn't exist. In orbit, satellites that had been disguised as communications relays for 60 years revealed their true purpose. But the most dangerous weapon wasn't technology. It was mindset. The Xarnak had spent centuries conquering species that fought conventionally, honorably, predictably. They'd never faced an enemy that had spent decades preparing for their arrival. While pretending to be helpless, War Admiral Kyfex received the distress signal from the Stalker pack just as his fleet entered Earth's sensor range. The message was fragmented, desperate, impossible. His elite warriors didn't fail. They didn't die to primitive weapons wielded by soft-skinned mammals. "Scan the planet again," he commanded. Full spectrum analysis. The results were disturbing. The electromagnetic signatures were more complex than initially detected. Energy readings spiked in patterns that didn't match the human supposed technology level. And there were gaps, areas where sensors returned no data at all, as if something was actively blocking their scans. "War Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "we're receiving multiple transmission sources across the planet. They appear to be communicating with each other." Kyfex's mandibles clicked with irritation. Of course they're communicating. All species do when threatened. "Sir, the transmissions are encrypted using quantum algorithms. These aren't primitive radio signals. They're using technology we don't recognize." For the first time in his career, War Admiral Kyfex felt something approaching uncertainty. The Dominion had conquered worlds across the galaxy, but they'd never encountered a species that had been watching, waiting, and preparing for their arrival. Earth wasn't a hunting ground. It was a carefully constructed killing field, and the Xarnak had just entered it. The trap springs were Admiral Kyfex's flagship, the Worldrender, descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Around him, 47 assault cruisers formed a perfect invasion formation, their weapon systems powered and ready. The Xarnak Dominion's second fleet represented enough firepower to glass continents, but something about this mission felt wrong. The planet below showed no signs of panic. No scrambling defense fleets, no desperate transmissions pleading for mercy. Just silence, as if Earth was waiting for them to arrive. "Orbital bombardment range achieved," reported Tactical Prime. "Zephyx." "Shall we begin planetary pacification?" Kyfex hesitated. Standard protocol demanded an immediate show of force obliterate a major population center to demonstrate Dominion superiority. But the fate of the Stalker Pack nagged at him. 12 elite warriors didn't simply vanish. even against organized resistance. Initiate surface scans. I want to know what happened to our advance team. The sensor arrays swept across the planet's surface, mapping cities, military installations, and population centers. The results were ... peculiar. Human technology appeared. Even more primitive than initial reports suggested crude projectile weapons, basic armor, simple communication systems. Yet the Stalker Pack's biosignatures had simply ceased to exist. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Catherine Torres watched the Xarithi fleet from the command center of Deep Station, Alpha. The facility had been carved into an underwater mountain range, its existence known only to a handful of people. Around her, technicians monitored displays showing the alien vessel's exact positions, weapon signatures, and communication frequencies. "Ma'am," reported Commander Jake Morrison, "all grid stations report ready. We have target locks on every hostile vessel." Torres nodded. The Prometheus grid had been designed for this moment, a coordinated strike using weapons the aliens couldn't detect until it was too late. Earth's defenders had learned from every crashed probe, every intercepted transmission, every failed first contact scenario. The Xarithi thought they were facing a primitive species. They were about to learn otherwise. "Initiate Phase 1, Torres commanded. Across the globe, the trap revealed itself. Railgun installations rose from beneath the ocean floor, their magnetic accelerators charged with enough power to hurl projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Particle beam weapons emerged from hidden mountain bunkers, their targeting systems locked on to the Xarithi fleet. In orbit, satellites shed their disguises and revealed directed energy weapons that had been masquerading as weather monitoring equipment. The first salvo struck the world renders, shields like the fist of an angry god. Kythix's mandibles gaped, in shock as his fortress ship shuddered under impacts that should have been impossible. The projectiles weren't just kinetic, they were exotic matter rounds, designed to destabilize the quantum fields that powered Xarithi defense systems. Impossible. Zephyx screamed through the ship's communication system. The planet's technology level can't support weapons of this magnitude. Around the flagship, assault cruisers began disappearing in brilliant explosions as particle beams found their mark. The Xarithi fleet's formation scattered, their perfect invasion turning into a desperate fight for survival. In the Alaskan wilderness, Morgan Vex watched the light show through his rifle scope's enhanced optics. The alien ships were burning across the sky like dying stars, their wreckage trailing fire through the atmosphere. He played his part in the opening act, but the real show was just beginning. His satellite phone buzzed with an encrypted message. "Phase 2 authorized. Targets inbound to your sector." Morgan smiled grimly. The Xarithi were about to learn why humans had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. They'd conquered species that fought honorably, following rules of engagement and tactical doctrine. But humans had learned warfare from each other, the most vicious, creative, and relentless opponents in known space. The escape pods began hitting Earth's atmosphere, carrying the survivors of the shattered fleet toward what they thought was safety. They had no idea they were landing in a world that had been preparing for their arrival for 70 years, populated by a species that had turned conflict into an art form. War Admiral Kythix's pod crashed through the canopy of a North American forest, his emergency systems barely keeping him alive. As consciousness returned, he found himself face to face with something impossible, a human who had been waiting for him. "Welcome to Earth," Morgan said, his rifle aimed at the aliens. "Head, let's have a conversation." The apex truth war Admiral Kythix's 4 arms were secured behind his back with restraints that shouldn't have been able to hold a Xarithi warrior. The human Morgan sat across from him in what appeared to be a primitive cabin, but the aliens' enhanced senses detected sophisticated technology hidden beneath the rustic facade. Your fleet is destroyed, Morgan said conversationally, cleaning his rifle with practiced efficiency. 47 ships, roughly 2,000 crew. Orbital debris. Suggests your people use escape pods, so we've got hunting parties tracking survivors across 6 continents. Kythex's mandibles clicked with rage. You cannot defeat the Dominion. We are the apex species. We have conquered 12 star systems in 800 years, Morgan interrupted. Yeah, we know. We've been watching you for a while now. The admission hit Kythex like a physical blow. Impossible. Your species hasn't achieved interstellar travel. Morgan's smile was cold as winter steel. Kid, we've had observers in your space for 60 years. How do you think we knew you were coming? In the depths of Deep Station Alpha, Admiral Torres reviewed the final casualty reports. The Xarithi Second Fleet had been annihilated in less than 4 hours. Their survivors scattered across a planet that had been preparing for their arrival since before most of them were born. The Prometheus grid had performed flawlessly, but the real victory lay in humanity's greatest advantage. They never fought fair. Ma'am, Commander Morrison reported, we're receiving transmissions from the Xarithi homeworld. They're demanding to know what happened to their fleet. Torres activated the quantum communicator, a device reverse-engineered from alien technology, but enhanced with human innovation. The signal would reach the Dominion's capital world in real time, carrying a message that would shake their empire to its core. Attention, Xarithi Dominion, Torres began, her voice carrying the weight of authority. This is Admiral Catherine Torres of the Terran Defense Force. Your invasion fleet has been destroyed. Your survivors are in custody. This is your only warning. The response came quickly, a mixture of disbelief, rage, and something that might have been fear. The Xarithi had never encountered a species that fought with such calculated brutality. Back in the cabin, Morgan continued his interrogation. See, here's what you never understood about humans. We didn't evolve to be apex predators. We evolved to be persistent hunters. We're not the fastest, or the strongest, or the most technologically advanced. But we're patient, we're creative, and we never stop adapting. Kythex's eyes narrowed. Your species will be exterminated. The Dominion will send more fleets. Go ahead, we'll be ready. Morgan leaned forward, his expression deadly serious. You want to know what makes humans different? We don't just fight wars, we study them. Every conflict teaches us something new. Every enemy makes us stronger. The truth was almost too large for the Xarithi to comprehend. Earth wasn't a primitive world stumbling into galactic conflict. It was a fortress world, populated by a species that had turned warfare into a science. They'd spent centuries fighting each other, learning lessons in violence that other species never had to master. The Dominion conquered weak species, Morgan continued. Civilizations that fought by rules, that had concepts of honor and fair play. You never faced anyone who'd spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing their own kind. Dr. Blackwood's voice crackled through the cabin speakers. Morgan, we've finished analyzing their technology. It's sophisticated, but it follows predictable patterns. They're warriors, not innovators. They conquer and absorb, but they don't create. Kythex's worldview crumbled as the implications sank. The Dominion's expansion had been built on conquering species that fought conventionally. They'd never encountered an enemy that had weaponized deception, that had spent generations preparing for threats that didn't yet exist. You called yourselves the apex species, Morgan said, standing and walking to the window. Outside, the northern lights painted the sky in brilliant colors, beautiful and alien. But you never understood what that really means. It's not about being the strongest or the most advanced. It's about being the most adaptable. The quantum communicator activated again, this time carrying a transmission from the Xarithi homeworld. The voice was different, older, more cautious. "Humans of Earth," the transmission began. "We ... We wish to discuss terms." Torres smiled grimly. "Admiral Torres here. I'm listening. The Dominion ... withdraws its claim on your system. We will not return." "Good choice," Torres replied. "But we'll be watching. And if you ever threaten another species the way you threatened us, we'll remind you what happens when you mistake patience for weakness." The transmission ended in silence. Morgan turned back to his prisoner. "Congratulations, War Admiral. You've just learned what every human child knows. There's always someone tougher than you. The trick is making sure you're not the one who finds out the hard way." Outside, the aurora continued its eternal dance, indifferent to the cosmic shift that had just occurred. Earth remained a small blue world on the edge of nowhere, but the galaxy would never see it the same way again. The apex. Species had just been reminded that evolution never stops.